Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of the mini-lecture series of the Center for Academic Writing at CUHN. Today I will talk about the importance of considering your readers in academic writing, indeed in writing in general. The topics I'm going to discuss are as follows. First, I will provide a few general comments on the importance of always keeping your readers in mind. Then I will talk about different types of readers and why it matters for whom you write. And finally, I will discuss communication with scholars in your academic field and differences in reader expectations between fields. More specifically, we will look together at two academic fields, political science and history, and how writing conventions often differ between them. Let me begin with the first topic and a general statement that applies to all writing. Keep your readers in mind. That is, always keep in mind that you're writing for others. Now you will probably think, of course, that is obvious. However, while you are working on your essays or longer writing projects, you will be consumed by your own arguments, your data, your desire to say what you want to say. Thus, it is easy to lose sight of your readers while writing. It is essential that you are always reminding yourself throughout the writing process that you are not only writing for yourself. Aim to be as clear in your writing as you can be. This includes essential elements of essay writing, which you can learn about in other lectures on the Writing Center homepage. For example, on how to compose effective paragraphs. This also means that not only the content of an essay matters, its style, including the choice of words and the structure of paragraphs, matters as well. Even if you have a brilliant and highly original argument, if your readers cannot follow your writing and really comprehend it, your argument will leave little mark. There's one more essential point which I would like to mention here. What makes sense to you does not necessarily make sense to others. By the time you have finished your essay, you will have reread it again and again. You will know it inside out. Everything makes perfect sense to you. But your readers encounter your essay for the very first time. Their experience is a completely different one from yours. Thus, always make sure that your writing is comprehensible to others. Ask friends, fellow students to read your drafts. And please, always encourage criticism. If your proofreader tells you, "Oh, I think it is perfect, there's no need to change anything," this will not help you. A reader telling you honestly that, for example, they have no idea what you're trying to say in a paragraph, now that is a good reader. Now, let us move on to the second topic, know your readers. What we just discussed applies to every reader, but at the same time you also have to consider different types of readers. At university, you will often write essays as assignments in courses, and thus for particular professors. But of course, other audiences for some of your writings exist. For example, you may write a pamphlet for fellow students, or later in your studies, a journal article for specialists in your field of research. For whom am I writing is an essential question to ask yourself while writing. Different readers have different levels of knowledge and expectations about writing. This means that the content and style of a piece of writing needs to be appropriate for the expected audience. For example, in this lecture, I'm assuming you're an undergraduate student who is at the beginning of his or her studies and wishes to learn more about academic writing. Because of this, the content of this lecture is at an introductory level, and my style is professional yet somewhat casual. Both the content and style of this lecture would differ significantly if I were to give this lecture to a different audience. When you write, think about how much your readers know about your topic. This is important because you do not want to leave your readers clueless. Take the situation of talking about your hobby with other people. When these people share your hobby, you do not have to provide many explanations. You can go straight to whatever you wish to talk about. But if these people have little understanding of your hobby, you first have to explain the basics. In academic writing, it is similar. If you write for a more general audience or a wider group of scholars, you have to make sure to explain all the relevant concepts. Specialists in your field, on the other hand, would already be familiar with them. At university, when you write an essay for a class, your professors usually know the theories or concepts you discuss. But professors often wish to make sure that you have properly understood your subject matter. For this reason, it is helpful to write with a general audience in mind. This way, you can make sure to include enough explanations in your essay. Let us now turn to the third and final topic of this lecture, communicating with scholars in your field. As I just mentioned, when you write for specialists, you can assume that your readers have substantial background knowledge about your topic. Take, for example, this introductory paragraph from a journal article. How do states as social actors cope with status anxiety, a sense of unease about their place in the world? Disparate strands of international relations, IR, research on status, hierarchies, ontological insecurity, and stigma politics variously tell us that states strive for higher international standing, struggle to feel secure in their own skin, and behave in ways that reflect their consciousness of other states' judgment of them. One common thread emerges out of these findings. States as social actors compare themselves to others as they make sense of their place in the world. This is from an article recently published in the journal International Organization. This is one of the major journals in the field of international relations, which is a subfield of political science. If you're not a specialist in this field, and assume that most of you are not, you will probably have some idea about the overall meaning of this paragraph. But some terms will probably be difficult to understand. For example, you may wonder, what is ontological insecurity? Now we can leave the meaning of this concept aside here. It is not of big relevance here. What is important here is how this author addresses an audience of specialists in her field. She assumes that her readers know this concept as well as others, and that she does not have to explain them. We can also use this paragraph to briefly discuss some differences in writing conventions between fields. So please keep in mind this paragraph while we move on to the next slide. Take a look at this introductory passage from another article. On November 24, 1964, the University of California Chancellor Vernon Cheadle addressed the audience at his institution's newly opened Education Abroad program, EAP, study center at the University of Madrid. After thanking the Spanish faculty who had aided EAP in securing the relationship with the university, Cheadle turned his attention to the California students spending the year in Spain. I want to congratulate the students on their determination to have an intellectually exciting, revealing, provocative, and permanently decisive experience, he began. This passage is from an article in the journal Diplomatic History. Like the last article, it discusses international affairs. It does so from a historical perspective, however. As you probably noticed immediately, the style in this article differs significantly from the one you encountered on the preceding slide. The last article focuses in its introductory paragraph on the scholarship about the topic, but this article here is describing a historical episode. Of course, not all articles in the field of history begin this way, nor do all articles in the field of political science start in a certain way. But this example still shows us that differences in writing conventions exist between these two fields. These kinds of differences also exist between other fields, be that in the social sciences, humanities, or natural sciences. Of course, the differences between fields go much further than writing conventions. The research questions we ask in political science and history, for example, often differ fundamentally. But this is a topic for another time. If you now wonder about the writing conventions in your own field, my advice is, be a reader yourself. Especially make sure to check the major journals in your field. Even if you cannot read everything, and no one can, take a look at the articles of greatest interest to you. To wrap up this lecture, let me say again, consider your readers. Write as clearly as possible, make sure that others can understand you. Think about your audience and tailor your writing accordingly. And make sure to learn the writing conventions in your field. Of course, all of this does not only apply to writing. It also applies to other academic tasks, especially giving presentations. Always consider your audience. For other fascinating lectures, please check the Writing Center homepage. I wish you a wonderful day and I hope to see you soon at the Writing Center. Goodbye, everyone.